Don't worry about the language. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Before we get started here, let me just make sure that we have all the audio levels correct. And let me just make sure we get the comments. This is going to be a juicy episode, so let's make sure that we get everything good. All right, Jazakallah khair for all the brothers that were in the text and in the comments ready to go. Before we get started, there is a pinned link in the YouTube, and I also put it on Facebook. Just a reminder that this episode I'm only going to be speaking to brothers because it is about brothers. I did an episode before, way before, and I wanted to do this episode as a follow-up, but things got busy, and then Ramadan came about, and you just lose track of time. But I wanted to do a follow-up because, excuse me, we talked about the women, the modern women, and I wanted to also share my thoughts on the modern man, and where we're heading in terms of, generally manhood. But before we get started, please make sure to share the video and make sure to like the video. That would be really helpful because, it helps the algorithms and people pick up on the video and, they get to know that we're live. So please make sure that you go ahead and like and share the video. And if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I do plan to become more active and, so you should see more comments or more videos later on. Now, with all of that out of the way, we are going to get into it. All right. Now we're going to dig deep. And the reason why I'm doing this episode is there is a lot of content in the so-called manosphere about men and particularly about women. A lot of content is directed to the way that women are behaving and the change in demographics, meaning the way that women used to be in a traditional sense to how they have become now. And I am not discrediting any of those arguments. As a matter of fact, I actually agree with a lot of what's been said about that. And that's why I did a video on this topic about women specifically. But I do think that as first and foremost, as a Muslim, and then as a man, I do feel like there's also a lot to be said about men and more specifically the modern Muslim man and where they are going. So I want this to be more of a conversation, right? So if there are brothers that are tuning in and you want to talk about some of the things that I'm going to be going over and discussing, the link is going to be pinged and, it'll bring you backstage here to the StreamYard stream here. And you can join the show and either, offer some feedback or, if you have a particular issue or something you want to talk about related to your own life, we can do that too. So let's kind of get right into it with all that stuff out of the way. So I think undoubtedly that there is a movement among men these days, and in generally men, not just Muslim males, but in general, men are pushing back against certain narratives that are being or are advocated, excuse me, by some of the extreme left and liberal movements that have targeted traditional male masculinity and the identity and the roles and ideas surrounding that. And I think that that has caused a movement among men, right? And a feeling as well that makes them want to respond. And they are gravitating towards this red pill movement because there are some aspects of the red pill movement that it resonates with them, and they they jump onto it and they co-sign it because it's a way to give a response to what they're feeling. And there's a couple issues with this. And the first thing I'm going to mention is that the red pill movement in itself is a very broad thing. I'm not an expert on it. I've seen videos, I've seen different figures, Muslims and non-Muslims. I do understand that it's a broad spectrum of ideas and thoughts and intentions. But I think there is a toxic element to it. And I hate to use this word toxic. It's so cliche, but I think it's well deserved here. This idea that looking at women from a non-Muslim perspective and seeing them as people or beings that are in competition with us and that we should always be suspicious of, and that we don't assume any good from them, and that they are pretty much worthless until we deem that they are worthy. Those kinds of thoughts and trends among the red pill movement are things that I completely disagree with. And I think it has to do even from an Islamic perspective, right? We are created in pairs, as the Quran mentions. We are meant to be garments for one another. We are meant to complement one another. Allah has taught us that, in the Quran, that He brings men and women together in mawaddah, in mahabbah, in love and admiration, and so that they can benefit one another and also increase themselves in goodness. And so the notion that all women are bad and that all women must be suspect and that they're inherently worthless until deemed otherwise is something that I don't think that Muslims should be embracing. I do think that it works for the non-Muslim audience and the non-Muslim maybe man who doesn't have the set of values that we do, and they don't know how to rectify, and their women don't know how to rectify, being a modest and God-fearing person in this world. For them, this is the level they may need to go to because they don't have something to lay the groundwork and something to fall back to as a default. But we as Muslims, we have an entirely different paradigm. And I think that that's where I disagree with the red pill movement in general. And I know, again, that some people will comment that the red pill is not really defined. And I understand that. I'm speaking about specific elements among or ideas within the red pill arena that I disagree with. And I think it can be problematic, right? And so this kind of brings me to the point where there's some things that I agree with, like the idea of being a traditional man, benefiting yourself, being the best possible version of yourself, taking care of your mental, your physical, your emotional. These are things that we can resonate with, right? And also the traditional aspect of that. I think these are positive points that Muslims in general gravitate to because of our conservative background. Islam, in its pure form, is what they would consider to be traditional, right? We affirm the normal gender roles. We affirm that there are hierarchies. We affirm that people are not 100% equal, that men and women are not equal, and we don't really subscribe to equality, but equity, right? And these kinds of ideas are something that the red pill does talk about. And I think, unfortunately, that movement has been the only one, or maybe the loudest voice, or allow this movement that gives a voice to men who feel or young men who feel disenfranchised. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that issue. So as a Muslim man, right, what are you doing? How can we as Muslim men, especially if you're a young man, pay attention? Because I'm a little bit older, kind of been through this. I kind of know how this works, right? But there are many elements that make a man and what we call rajula. And it's not just about being the loudest voice or the deepest voice or the strongest man, how much you can bench press or how aggressive you can become. Those are ideas that some people may subscribe to, but rajula is more important than that. Rajula is much larger than that. And one of the objectives of the Red Pill movement is to be the best version of yourself so that you can attract the best mate possible, right? And changing the things about yourself that you have control over and ignoring the ones that you can't, right? Like, for example, nobody can change their genetics. Nobody can change the color of their skin, where they were born, who their parents are, these kind of things. But you can certainly change your fitness, your mental health and ability, your educational status, your your income status, right? You can make changes that will then help to improve or better your circumstances. And these are things that I believe that Muslim men should also be focused on. While it's great to recognize that there is a movement of liberal women and liberal ideas that are trying to target the Muslim male, or the male in general, but what are you doing to embody the traditional male? What are you doing to ensure that our traditions last and they overcome these liberal movements, and that we, in the end, we end up standing firm? And this is what I wanted to talk about. So we oftentimes in the Red Pill movement, they will say, well, what value does a woman bring to a man, right? And these are fair questions. I don't want to get too far into them, right? That was discussed in a different video. However, at the same time, I think that the question needs to be asked, what value do you bring to a potential spouse? What effort have you shown to a traditional spouse and her wali, in this case for a Muslim? What have you done in order to say that you are deserving to be married to, or that you are that you will be a quality man that will be a quality protector and maintainer of your potential spouse or spouses, right? We can't forget about polygamy and having multiple wives. But that being aside, and this is kind of where we're going to kind of focus in this episode. So a lot of young guys, when they're going to college and they're going through things like this, right, they're not really planning their future. First things first is you need to understand where you want to be in life. Now, I'm not saying you have to have everything figured out, right? That's impossible to know. But you need to have a general plan. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? What kind of home do you want? How many children would you like to have by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Where is it that you actually want to be? And I think that these questions will then help you make a decision going forward. For example, a lot of young guys are in college or end of high school, and they're thinking about what they're going to do. A lot of times you hear people tell you, do what you love, follow your passions, and you'll be successful. I don't buy that for a moment. Let's be honest here. Majority of us go to college or take vocational schools or go to vocational schools with the intention that we will have sustainable income. Stable, sustainable income that we can then use to leverage and say, listen, I am stable and ready to get married, And so therefore, this is my proof of that I have stable income. I can afford a family. I can support myself. I can make plans for the future. And so if you're going to consider that, if you want to have a good looking wife, a high quality woman, they are in turn going to need something stable, something that is going to, be comforting and a sense of security for them. I'm not saying you need to be the richest, right? Again, rizq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's no doubt that men that have more money have more options, right? Because women feel secure to this. It's in their nature to feel that, hey, I need to be able to know that I'm taken care of. And nothing says that like money, right? I mean, this is just the uncovered truth, right? So if you know that is a reality, what are you doing to increase that part of your value? If you're going to school and you're studying journalism and you're wasting your time with stupid things like marine psychology, where you know that, 1 in a million will become successful and famous and they might make decent income, but the majority of people in these certain fields don't really amount to much. They're struggling. They have a difficult lifestyle. They're constantly busy. Why would you then choose that field to go into? Right? I know some people come out and say, well, it's my passion and people need to do things like this. We need people, representation, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But I'm speaking for the average male. Most of the average men are not concerned with all of that. They're concerned with being stable and presenting themselves to a potential spouse and to plan a family and to be, to have a future. So, number one, what are you considering in your future? Does that even need to be college? Some people waste time in college when they're not set for college. Their mindset is not for college. Their attitude is not for college. And is that a bad thing? No, people are different. But what are you doing to compensate? Do you go learn a vocational skill? Can you become a plumber, a carpenter? Can you do engineering? Electrical work? Can you do these things? These are vocational tasks that may not sound the greatest on paper or maybe to the ear when you say that. But I can guarantee you that many of these men, they have stable income. Their incomes that are their jobs that are specifically desired. They are in demand and they don't go out of style. So you will have stable income and you will be able to earn money quicker because you're not doing a 4-year degree or so forth and so on. And I'm not saying that everybody should go that route, but I'm saying that there's an alternative to going the route to college when you're not even sure what you want to do, or where you are picking a particular field that that is not going to really benefit you. You're going to go into college, be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt, and you're making $38,000, $40,000 a year. What are you going to do? Right? I mean, most of us try to aspire. Maybe you want to have, in most metropolitan areas, a home, and this is about America specifically, but a home is probably $300,000-$400,000. If you are going to go and get a mortgage, even from a halal company, you need 20% down, and you need to have a certain amount of income to be able to prove that. You need to be able to make monthly payments of, let's say in a $500,000 house, you need to pay at least $2,500 to $100 to $3,000, maybe more, depending on your area, depending on taxes, depending on insurance, depending on association fees. Then you're not counting utilities. Where do you expect to live, right? Do you want to have a couple children? How do you plan to derive the income to provide for them, right? You have to plan these things. We cannot just say we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although He is the one who enriches people as He pleases, but you have to make an effort. That is part of having tawakkul ala Allah. You need to be able to do what you can do from your part. So are you, number one, as a man, thinking about these things? Or are you just, now I know it's difficult because a lot of times guys are thinking, man, they just want to get married so they can smash, right? And I get that. That's part of being young and being hormonal. But what I'm saying is that there's got to be more to you as a man. And this is going to come back to another point later on. We're going to leave that for right now, but you have to be able to plan, right? You have to be able to look at yourself and figure out what your 10-year, 15-year, 20-year plan is. Where do you want to be? How do you envision yourself living in the future with a potential spouse and a family? What kind of house do you want? What kind of cars do you want to drive? How many vacations do you want a year? How many times do you, things like this, like how often do you want to eat out? Things like that are important to plan for a man. And to be fair, this is what women ideally gravitate towards men with, right? Or two, because of this idea that we are systematic and logical and we plan and we're decisive, right? These are attractive things to women. When a woman sees a man that has his stuff together, that is extremely attractive to a woman because it shows responsibility, stability. It shows worth. It shows that he's a doer and not just a talker, right? And by the way, I'm speaking of the high quality women that you want, right? And let's just be honest here, right? I'm not talking about like the women that we discussed in our previous episode, the ones that want to be the boss woman and the ones that want to run everything in the household. You don't want that kind of woman, right? You want a woman that brings feminine energy. But in order to have feminine energy and in order to, you have to have masculine energy and you have to exert that, right? You have to be able to say, listen, I got you. If I want you to stay home, if I want to be the leader of the home, you have to be able to demonstrate that you are able and capable of being a leader. And that includes the financial responsibilities. And the reason why I started with finance is because that's a big part. Anyone who's married will tell you that many relationships are become rocky or they get worse when money becomes an issue. And even if they have problems that are not related to money, money makes it even worse when there's money problems. It makes the whole entire situation worse. And so I start with that because it's also a demonstration of what you've been doing as a man to prepare yourself for that responsibility. The other thing that I wanted to speak about is that as far as the income, that's one thing. We got that out of the way. There's also a certain way that men must carry themselves. And this is going to tie back into some of what I have an issue with in the Red Pill movement. A lot of these guys that are joining the Red Pill movement and making videos about this in the manosphere, they're doing it in a reactionary format. And they're masking that with saying they're defending traditional masculinity and countering feminism. While I don't disagree that it does that to some degree, but this comes back to intention. Are you making this content? Are you subscribing to this content? Are you joining this movement because you're hurt and your feelings got hurt by a woman ranting on the internet or in person? And if you're reacting to this, to me, this is not manly. If you're doing it simply reactionarily and you're not actually doing it because you see the harm in it, right? If you're simply mad and upset and you're saying, I hate women, oh my God, like you're making a generalization and you're losing your mind over it, I don't think that is masculine. Men know when to respond and what to respond to. We know in generally speaking, women tend to be more emotional than men are. And that's something that we as men don't identify with and we don't really encourage for males, right? Men are supposed to be logical, in control, decisive, methodical, in control. And being emotional or over emotional. By the way, when I'm speaking about this, I'm not talking about having emotions. Emotions are natural. We're talking about being over emotional and letting emotions impact your judgment. And this is something more associated with femininity, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing for them, but for a male, it shows a degree of weakness in a man where he can't separate his emotions from his ability to make decisions based on reason and critical thinking and logic. So I mentioned that because if you're simply signing on board for this stuff because you're reacting to something, you're behaving exactly the way that you criticize, or what you do, the way that you don't like, or the thing that you don't like about the other gender, right? Which differentiates us from the other gender. You are embodying that, and that is counter masculinity. That is against masculine energy. So my point, and I'm not saying it's all men that do that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you have to know your intention. If your intention is to say, listen, I recognize there's a tsunami of feminists and liberalism, in the world today, and I'm trying to do this and embrace this movement as a part to reaffirm my position as a man, as a Muslim man, as a traditional masculine male, then then that is understandable, right? But again, it cannot be based on emotions, and this is tying into my second point, that men need to know that having strength and power and advantages in situations does not mean that you always have to flex that. So if I'm bigger than somebody, or if I know I can beat somebody up, and I can go ahead and definitely do that. But is it wise to do that? Is it something that I should be doing? Do I need to exert my strength and masculinity at that moment? Is it fair? Or if I have the ability to respond because of my status or whatever it may be, does it qualify as an appropriate time to use that? Or am I just abusing what I have as a man? And this is what I'm trying to get to, is that as men we have justice, right? We is a big thing for us. There have been numerous studies about this in the media and even in academically about how men prefer justice over empathy, and we need to hold us. That is the strength of men. That is why when it comes to certain things like judging and rulership and imam, things like this, Islam prefers and says that men should be the one that hold this position, because these are qualities that typical men would have and prefer. And so let's go back to the basics. Check your emotions. Check your actions. Are you behaving in a just manner? Do you present yourself as a male that is in control of his emotions and in control of his surroundings? Because a traditional masculine man does not need to flex his muscles every time he gets mad or angry or has an opposition. But a good leader actually takes control of a situation. He can be tactful. He knows when to exercise strength. He knows when to exercise restraint. Right? This is part of being a level-headed man and knowing how to be a good leader, knowing how to be when to be diplomatic, when to be stern, when to be soft. And where am I getting this from? You're probably thinking, why is he just saying this? Well, what is the greatest example of masculinity? It is none other than the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Was the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, was he always harsh? Was he always soft? Was he always warning people, or was he always inviting people? Right? You don't find him doing one of these things all the time. He knew when to exercise these different capabilities that men have. And that is the example that we should be taking. He knew when to be soft with his wives and with his children, when to be harsh with them, when to be stern with them, with his companions as well too, with the believers and unbelievers. There's a time and place for everything. And a man, a good quality man, a masculine man, learns from the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he learns when the Prophet exercised these different characteristics. And that's why we say that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is such a complex human being in a way that he fulfills every single role that a man could possibly fill. Whether it is a prophet, a messenger, a judge, a leader, a political figure, a father, a brother, a husband, a father-in-law, a son-in-law, right? All of these things that you see, all these different aspects that a man could fit into in the world, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was the best example in each and every one of them. And so when I talk about these ideas, I'm not giving you something that I feel like is just, going against some of the red pill ideas. It's something that I find rooted within Islamic tradition. And we also have the example of Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anh, where, he mentions that, when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr were in power, they were men that were generally very empathetic. And so I had to be a little bit harsh to balance that out. And subhanAllah, look at this. He's recognizing where at a time and place, why he's exercised. He's not just behaving this way. Remember that. Focus on this point. He's not just behaving like a strong man because he is strong. Everyone knows Umar ibn Khattab was a tall man. He was a big man. He was strong. People feared him. But he was not exercising his strength because of that. He was doing that to complement, because he knew that the two people in front of him were a little bit more empathetic. And so he didn't want people to take advantage of them. And so he displayed his strength to kind of balance it out. And then when he assumed the position of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said, I had to soften myself, because now I was in that position where people would come to me and I had to show them leniency. I had to show them empathy, because a leader has to have those qualities, right? In order to be a successful leader, he has to understand, he has to be able to analyze a situation with a cool mind and then react to it, putting aside his emotions and his biases. And this is what I'm trying to get to you, my brothers, that this is a characteristic of rajula. This is what embodies a man, where he recognizes that Allah has entrusted him with a certain ability over others. And he recognizes that. He recognizes what is good and what is bad. He recognizes that decisions don't always just impact yourself. They impact people around you. And you have to be responsible for that as well too. That key responsibility. And that starts where? You cannot be a good leader to the people if you're not a good leader to your home. So all of these things that these Sahaba did and these leaders of Islam did and the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, they first had this in their homes and in their personal lives before it was done in the public. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So what are you doing to embody these principles? Are you looking at situations in your life and saying, hey, how do I approach this in a methodical manner that is within the confines of the Sharia, and I'm trying to tackle this? What is the best way? Am I being honest with myself? Am I being the best person to be that I can be, so that I can be an example to others, using my strength? Am I the one encouraging people to pray Fajr in the morning? Am I rushing to do good deeds? Am I embracing the chivalry that the Prophet ﷺ had? Am I caring for the poor and the orphans the way that Umar and Abu Bakr would do in their reign? Are you embodying these types of things? Right? Are you also willing to stand up in front of your friends when they're doing something wrong? And instead of joking with them and laughing with them, do you say no? As much as that might feel good, As much as I don't want to, as fun as that can be, are you willing to put your foot down and say, hey, wait a minute, brothers, maybe what we're doing is too far. Maybe what we're doing right now is not sanctioned Islamically, and we should probably step back a little bit. You, as a confident man, you have to be okay with being the party pooper when it comes to your principles. And unfortunately, many men, young, old, middle-aged, they go with the flow. You notice that? They just move with the flow. And that's problematic, because a man must be principled. And that's the third thing. A man must be principled. Men and women respect men that hold their values. They may disagree with them. And when I say hold your values, I don't mean disrespectfully. You can always respectfully and tactfully maintain your positions that you have and get your point across without being vulgar, without being, without being rude or disrespectful. But at the end of the day, if you do it that way, people who vehemently disagree with you will still respect you because you've displayed that. Right? And so you must be principled. This applies to everything from, when you're wrong, when people advise you on political issues, on religious issues, on everything. Because we have a root in Islam. Those principles that we should embody are rooted within Islam. And that is for what we need to do. And that is exactly what I think that is lacking today. That we're not principled. Some guy in the red pill movement comes out and says something you like, and now you're co-signing him. You become a member of his channel, and now you're binge watching his videos like he's the new messenger to you. This is problematic. Be principled, brothers. There's no harm in saying, listen, you know what, a guy like Kevin Samuels, I agree with some of the stuff that he said, but hey, at the same time, he's very wrong about certain things, and we shouldn't shy away from saying something like that. Or anybody else, whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim. Right? And I think that that's important to be principled, guys. Be men that, even if people disagree with you, they can look back and say, man, you know what, Murtada, that guy, I didn't agree with him. I didn't really like his views on everything too much. But, he was very respectful and he was principled. He never wavered in what he believed in. And believe it or not, men and people will respect you more for being principled. And this is something very, very important. I think, we do. And just a quick reminder to everybody out there, I do have the link pinged in the comment section. If you want to join in and maybe have a question or share something, an experience, or just a general conversation, and you're a brother, join in. We'd love to have you on so we can kind of discuss this, because I do realize that as a gentleman that's older, I don't have the same insight as to some of the things that you may have as younger people, right? And yes, I'm recognizing I'm older, and there's no problem with that. Facts are facts, and that's fine. But I think the general archetype of a man is something that I'm very familiar with, right? Taking care of responsibilities, being principled, sticking to your guns, knowing when to admit that you are wrong about something and humbly accepting that, taking advice, right? These are things that Muslim men should aspire to have, because these are the things that the Prophet ﷺ would embody and would encourage other men to embody. There's one other thing that I also did want to touch on, is the idea of, since we mentioned being over emotional, I want to talk about emotions as well too. Sometimes, and some people, they identify emotions with something feminine or negative. And I want to clear that up for a second. Emotions are not masculine or feminine, they are human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He talks about the emotions that all human beings go through: fear, anger, sadness, depression, happiness, all of these things. This is part of being human. A person who does not have emotions is probably someone that's suffering mentally. Right? Every human being has an emotion. And we see that the companions expressed emotions, and the Anbiya also expressed emotions. And so we should not shy away from that. Meaning, telling your wife that you love her. This is not a quote unquote simp move. Telling your brother that that you love him. Right? Or your mother, your father. These are not, weak moments. These are human moments. Right? Saying when you're angry and when you're upset, letting people know that certain things bother you. And by the way, I'm not saying complaining and whining. I'm talking about actually, essentially just communicating the emotions that you have. This is a very, very human thing to do. Okay? The thing that we criticize, though, is being over emotional and letting to the point in which your emotions dictate your outcome, how you react to a situation. This, my friends, is the opposite of masculinity. Remember that. It's not the emotions, it's how you react and the impact of the emotions, how much you allow it to impact your decisions going in the future. Let me just take a look at the chat real quick here. Let me scroll up here. Okay. Capo says, brother, feminism is getting crazy. Yes, it is. And I've done a previous episode on that. You can check that out. I wanted to make this video to target the men. I did one on the women, and I think that we need to target the men a little bit, right? Let me see what here says. Capo done. It is, but Muslim men are also becoming incredibly feminine along Islamic values and work. Exactly. These are things that we're embracing here. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome. What look 12? What's going on? I hope you're doing well. Good to see you, brother. Long time no see. My brother from the Netherlands. Jazakallah khair, Capo Don. I appreciate you. Love you, man. So we got to Sharjil, who says a beautiful point. Akhi, it reminds me of Musa alayhi salam, who used his strength to get water for the two women by the well, albeit him being exhausted due to self-exile. This is a very good example, meaning this is something expected of the man, right? And although today traditional feminism and liberal ideas will teach you that men don't need to do things for women, the chivalry is dead, and that women are capable of doing things the way they want to, and blah, 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 blah. But this is the characteristics of the Anbiya, that when they saw the less fortunate or the weaker, even though they know that they could be able to handle it, they were the first to serve and help people. This is the character of a man. And I'm saying that, and obviously I'm not saying you should serve everybody and anybody. You have to be careful of who you're directing your attention towards, and so forth and so on. And that will be a different conversation. But this is generally the principle, that we try to be helping. We use our masculinity to be protectors and maintainers. And this is something that Musa alayhi salam was doing himself in this example, a very beautiful example. Chivalry is what is lacking in many men today. Unfortunately, yes, and I think it's become that way because they're reacting to some of this negative movement or feedback from the liberal side, but we should not allow them, and this goes back to my point about emotions, don't allow their comments to emotionally stir you in a direction which takes you away from being what you should be as a man. And that is chivalrous, right? Don't respond to their crazy ideas by then embracing it subconsciously by saying you're going to reject chivalry now, right? You do what you have to do as a man. If somebody doesn't like it, and if somebody is not, doesn't want it, that's their problem. You don't stop being who you are because somebody else wants you to change. That's part of being consistent and principled, right? You maintain who you are in all situations. Doesn't matter what people want you to become. You stay who you are. And that's an example of why chivalry has also been on the decline. Let me see here. We have Dot. Don't know the name there, but do you think with the way that the socio-economic modern family structuring and mental health of the greater society is, that Muslims may find it more plausible to have Milkul Yamin? Well, I mean, this is a good question, right? I mean, it's very, very interesting. I mean, Milkul Yamin is something that obviously we're going to get through Ghanaim, like in war. And if that opportunity arises, then sure. I mean, I don't see why Muslim men would not benefit from that in that way. But I think more importantly than that, I think the better question would be, do I think that we're going to see more of these polygamous marriages? And that I definitely think will be happening. I think that is something that that we'll be seeing more of, because there will be lower quality men and a few high quality men that women will naturally gravitate to, unless we reverse this. Meaning, unless we encourage men to return back to the example of the Prophet ﷺ and embrace traditional Islamic masculinity. I don't see that Muslim women will find that attractive. They'd rather come to a compromise, as much as they don't want to admit it, and say, I'd rather be with a man who is 100% a man and a good example of a man, than just be monogamous with a man that is, that in a monogamous relationship with a man that is half a man and doesn't really embody and carry himself as a man. And although they may hate me saying that, but I think they're already recognizing that themselves. And I've heard stories of so-called boss women and career women that have inquired, about being co-wives to people that I know of that are matrimonial sites. They own them, and so yeah. I think that'll happen. So yes. Let me see here. Jazakallah khair. Brother Muzzy, going against the grain is what the ghuraba do. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from among those the ghuraba. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khair. Fatuma, alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, I think Floating Man is helping out. Thank you for helping out there, brother, by the way. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dano, the Dapper Donut. Great. Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I see you joining in. Let me just get through the comments here, and then we'll get you on the show, brother, inshallah. Brother, why is it so hard to find a spouse nowadays if you want to keep some traditional Islamic structure? All right, you know what? I'm going to bring you on since the question is asked by you and you joined backstage. Let's bring you on here and let's talk about this. Assalamu alaikum, Dano. Can you hear me, brother? You're going to have to unmute. Oh, I think the brother got disconnected. Okay. We'll wait for him to come back, inshallah. Imam Yasser Fazega, who is also a professional mental health therapist and marriage counselor, has stated how he is dealing with patients who have been divorced. And, okay, the minute you say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made men greater, you are out of the game. Right. So I'm going to wait on that. Actually, Dana was the one that joined and Kappa was the one that asked the question. I'm sorry. So let me go ahead and refer to this. This question here. It's going to be hard, and I'm going to do a follow-up episode on this, because now that I've talked about women and we're talking about men, what I want to do is I want to kind of bridge this together. And I think what you're asking is an excellent question. It's kind of related to what the future topic should be. And what it is that there is an agenda, I believe, to put men and women against each other, right? To create these gender wars with the intention that men and women don't get married, to intentionally put them against each other so that they stay in the condition of just hating each other to the point in which they don't get married, but they encourage zina and promiscuity and lack of accountability and children out of wedlock, and destroy the traditional idea of marriage. And that is what I personally believe, that this isn't an aim and objective of certain people, right? However, the reason why we're finding it difficult in these days and age to get married is because there is a change in the way that we traditionally view roles. And for a man who grew up watching his own family and maybe seeing a more traditional role, he's having trouble finding that in a woman. And women, unfortunately, are being taught that men are their equals and that everything should be split down the line. Everything is, and the old way is the patriarchy, and it's disgusting, and that men are not worth it, and no man is loyal. I mean, both sides are reinforcing the negative characteristics of the opposite gender. Things that we know may exist, but things that we traditionally used to overlook because we saw a common benefit and we saw a common good in getting married. We saw the healthy, productive marriages. We saw the offspring. We saw the healthy family, the healthy children. We used to overlook the faults of our partners, be it man or woman, because we had a goal, right? And this is the problem, right? So if the more you if you spend all your time joining one camp and attacking the other, naturally you're going to only see the negative. How do you expect to get married to the opposite when all you're seeing is negative? Right? And that's the issue, part of the issue. And also I think another reason why is a lot of young Muslim men are not really focused on really committing to marriage because they don't see that it's worth it. So what I would say is that my advice would be Muslim men need to not forget about the noise. Be the traditional Muslim man and do what you need to do. And the women that are traditional and that are high quality, that value what you value, they will be apparent to you. Because you mentioned that the minute you mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you, the minute you mentioned that Allah made men or causes them to excel over the other, you get canceled. You only get canceled to the modern woman who wants to be quote unquote equal to you. And you don't want that woman anyways. You don't want that headache. So it's a great natural filter. But when you continue in that, you'll find a woman that recognizes that as well too and embraces that and think that there's nothing wrong with that. And it allows her to embrace her feminine energy. It allows you to embrace your masculine energy. And so what will happen is you will attract those kinds of women. And that's the kind of women that that you do want. You don't want the modern woman that's going to destroy you. Right? It's going to give you hell and then divorce you and then take half your money and then leave you in a state where you can't even afford to get remarried to a traditional woman. Right? So alhamdulillah, but it requires you going back to being the man that embodies the principles that Rasulullah ﷺ had and working on yourself, working on your mental, working to push back against some of these extreme liberal ideas and some of the extreme red pill ideas, working to increase your physical health, making sure that you stay fertile, you stay healthy, you stay strong, you appear pleasant looking to your potential spouse, that you focus on your economics, you focus on leveling up. You know, many guys, they want to drive a car, right? They want to drive a nice car, they want to do this, but they're doing it on credit. They don't own these things. They're living a invented lifestyle on credit. That's not the way that a man should be thinking, because those kinds of people are buying things because they want others to recognize how cool they are. If you buy nice things because you enjoy them and you want to reward yourself, that's something different. It's a different mentality. We'll talk about that kind of mentality later on, right? But the way that people are living, buying things on Instagram and these places and tweeting, unboxing, vacations, all that stuff for other people to say, wow, man, you live such a great life. Oh wow, man, you're balling. Or you're probably, you're probably getting chicks all over now because you got that car, right? It's a magnet. They want people to give them that feedback because it's projecting insecurity. So instead of doing that, right, what are you doing to level up your game economically? Are you picking the right field? Do you have a side hustle? Are you talking to people in your circle? Who are the people around you, right? Who are they? Just look at your net worth around you. Are they people that are productive? Or are they bums playing video games all day long, scrolling through Instagram models or swiping left and right on marriage apps? What are they doing? Are the people around you going to help you grow your mindset? Are they going to help you level up your game? Put you in touch with a circle of people that are also entrepreneurial, or that can maybe get you a job that gets you in a higher position that you are in. Maybe you work in IT and you've been stagnant. Maybe you've been working at a certain level, of doing, the labor work or the actual physical work all day long in IT. And now you're trying to level up to a position of management. Who is your circle? How are you going to get in there? Right? These are the things that you need to be kind of focusing on to make sure that you're attracting the woman that's traditional, that's a high quality woman, that is traditional in the way that you want. But what I'm saying is that she has to be able to see that. And I'm saying one of the ways she'll be able to see that is the way you carry yourself. All of these things that we're talking about right now will definitely shine in the way that you carry yourself, in the conversations that you have, in the way that you dress, in the way that you speak. All these things that we're talking about will be influenced by these other actions, right? Because you're creating a mindset for yourself. So it's all the Muslim men will say, we want to get married, we want to get married, we want to get married. What are you doing to get married, Yahi? What are you doing? What from you projects this idea that you are ready and stable to get married and you can get married once and maybe even twice? What are you projecting to the world that shows that? That's not fake. That is really genuine. So that's what I would say as an advice too, right? That you take this on board and say, listen, I know it's difficult to get married and that's a difficult process, but what am I, since it's so difficult and I don't want to go through it all, over and over again, what am I doing to get myself prepared to attract the kind of woman that I want and to maintain that lifestyle that I want? What can I be doing better internally? And you have to be honest with yourself and say, listen, I kind of lack in the finance department. Maybe I lack in the fitness department. Maybe I lack in the way that I communicate. Maybe I need to be a better speaker, right? Maybe I need to work on my confidence. And that could be by fitness. It could be by taking speaking classes like Toastmaster, something, right? But you have to know each and every person is different. But you have to be the best version of yourself to attract the best kind of the mate that you want, right? So I would give that as an advice. My good friend Yusuf Chowdhury. Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to, this is a very good friend of mine, by the way, guys. A wonderful brother that I had a chance to meet and to break bread with. And I definitely go and follow him. This is another example of a brother that exudes masculinity. He just, it oozes out of him. He runs a business. He teaches people how to generate income on the internet as well too, and using like ads and Google. I'm not an expert in stuff, but he's the guy to go to. So make sure you definitely check out Brother Yusuf. He has his own channel, and make sure you check him out. MashaAllah, he's very, very good to be around. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ammu yam. Good to see you. Nice to have you. Jazakallah khair. Alaikum assalam. Yeah, Jazakallah khair to everybody for joining. Inshallah we will, but let me just get to my conversation. Bi'idhnillah, Poker Baby Fitter. We just need to, get through the conversation. So listen, at this point, I want to invite anyone that has questions about something. If you are maybe conflicted about what you want to do in your own personal life, make the link should be pinned up there. You guys should be able to join in. And partake in that. I'm going to give a few minutes for that. Just because I know we've been in over an hour here. I'm trying to do a different thing now where with the videos that I upload are going to be not too long because I know people don't have the patience to do that. But I'm going to give a few more minutes here for anyone who wants to join in. and we can kind of maybe just talk about some of the issues. If not, if you want more of these kinds of videos, and you have a specific topic about masculinity that you want to talk about, just comment down below. Let me know what you guys are thinking, and we can talk about those issues. I have no problem doing videos on this, but the issue is that, as I mentioned, we have to return back to being traditional men. We cannot allow different movements that are un-Islamic, whether they be the extreme red pill or extreme liberal feminists, to make us emotional to the point where we react to that and we're out of our element, right? We have our emotions, but we cannot be over emotional. And so my point being is that maybe we create something we call the green pill, right? Or whatever it may be, where it's an Islamic masculinity, where we go back to embodying that, right? And we maintain that, and we maintain that to our principle, to our letter. And I think that will be something that we'll see an overall benefit from, because the idea is that if you put that forward, the women will realize that either I fall in line with that or I'm not going to get married, right? Because at the end of the day, it is men that control marriage. We decide when we are going to commit and when we're going to give someone a dowry, a mahr, right? And the reality is that men have a longer window than women do. Women realize at a certain age, maybe when they're young, they have the advantage. Men have to prove themselves when they're younger. Women are inherently valuable. But as they get older, they need to realize, hey, if I want to attract a kind of man that I want, and I don't want to be old and alone, I'm going to have to be attractive to the kind of to the kind of man that I want. And if we as Muslim men, we go back to that root and we taking care of our of our foundations, economics, our mental, our physical, all that, and we're very principled, that will then mean that a woman that desires a successful Muslim man is going to have to play her part. And that's how you're going to change the whole game. That's how we're going to change up the whole game. That's the bottom line, right? Don't give them a half taste. Don't give them, something that's like, we don't half step in Islam as Muslims, right? Even when the Muslims, when Allah is talking about the people entering Islam, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idkhulu fis silmi kaffa, right? Enter Islam completely, not half foot there, half foot here. If you're going to be a man, be a man. Don't play the game, right? You want to be a Muslim man, be a Muslim. Embrace your male identity, but don't embrace it in a toxic way, right? Do it by the way the Prophet did it. There's no better example than him. He is rahmatul lil alamin. He is the one that came to be a guide for us all. So take that as the key point if you walk away from this. If you want to know how to be a man, look at the Prophet, study his life, and implement that. Don't be someone that just sits back and says, man, I wish I could do that, and not do anything about it, and then go watch go watch a liberal video and foam at the mouth, and then go watch a red pill video at the end of that to make yourself feel good. That's not getting you nothing, brother. You're not going to benefit from that, right? If you're wondering why you're not getting married or why you're not attracting the kind of woman that you want, it's because you need to fix certain things about yourself, and that's the hard reality. Sitting on the internet and joining groups complaining about women is not going to get you married, brother. It's certainly not going to attract the kind of woman that you want, because women don't like men that whine. Let's just be honest here. Anyone that's married, or a woman, or maybe a woman can come and tell us this, even though I'm not doing a live for the women yet, but women don't like men who complain and whine all the time. That's not the characteristic of a manhood. So rather than doing that, put yourself in that position that makes you that makes you attractive to the kind of woman that you want. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh my God, we have a celebrity among us, ladies and gentlemen. It is none other than Ben Iqra, all the way from the United Kingdom. A pleasure to have you here, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Good to have you. Fortunately, we've been running an hour over the stream and 17 minutes past the hour, and I did not mean to go on too long. So I wish I could go on longer, but it is about time for us to wrap up. I appreciate you, all the brothers joining in. Jazakallah khair. Ammu yam yam. Oh, mashallah, he came up. Maybe I'm going to go check out. I didn't know there was a video, but I'll go check it out, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. I'll go check it out. I'm so interested in this idea of the green pill. I think it's a great movement. I think that maybe we can watch some of the videos, and maybe some of you brothers can go over there and watch Amu Yemyem and see what the content is. I'm not sure, but if Yusuf is endorsing it, then I'm sure that it's going to be quality stuff. So please make sure you go over there as well too. I'm definitely interested because I'm liking this idea of having owning the own like Muslim manosphere, right? I'm big on that. I think Muslims need to be influenced by Muslims alone. We should not be influenced by or by non-Muslims or even Muslims who are appealing to non-Muslims, right? There's a quote-unquote podcast out there that is run by someone who has a Muslim identity, but it's clearly un-Islamic, right? And we shouldn't be influenced by that either. I think we have more than enough from within Islam to create and craft and maintain the Muslim masculinity, which is rajula. Right, so definitely we'll be doing more conversations. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think and what your thoughts are. What you want me to expand on later in the future. If you want more of these conversations, it was a pleasure to have you guys this Saturday. I hope you guys enjoy. Please make sure to subscribe and to like the video and share it if you thought it was beneficial. But as always, we appreciate you being here. Jazakumullahu khairan. We'll see you on the next episode of Muzzy Buzz. Until then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We'll see you next time.